All right, so we're talking about key concept 4.1. So this is the Columbian Exchange. It's really like all about globalization, and it includes like the silver trade, right? The flow of silver that was happening between Asia and the Americas, and in Europe. And you really have this just like massive connection of the world, right? Like never before had the entire world been connected in trade, like with Indian Ocean trade, with Silk Roads, with Mediterranean Ocean, Trans-Saharan Desert. Like those things were not global. They connected massive amounts of people and goods and ideas, but it wasn't the whole world. You didn't have the Americas included. Really, like David Christian kind of talks about in Big History, there being these world zones, and it's really not like it's not unlike almost separate planets, right? Like what was happening in the Americas was completely separate from what was happening in Afro-Eurasia, and those things just did not connect. And so now, with globalized trade, with the Columbian Exchange, they're connecting. You have these like worlds colliding. So, like, why were the Europeans wanting to explore in the first place? You can basically narrow this down to those like three G's: God, glory, gold, and that's will come up on this list. But these are sort of like the causes. Like, why do you have these explorers? Ultimately, Italy had kind of a monopoly on trade between Europe and Asia because they had the Mediterranean ports. All that region in between, that was the sort of like the middle, right? Like that was kind of the gateway to Europe, and they had control of that. And so in Western Europe, Spain, Portugal, and France, um, obviously the British, the Dutch, they're now trying to keep up. Right now, they need a new route because otherwise, Italy's got the monopoly, and they're not going to make any money off of it. So they got to search for new routes. And now that there's new technologies that are making that possible, there's a reason to explore. This is happening. This is the cause for it. So the other reasons for this, though, are like that idea of God, right? So spreading Christianity is one of the causes for exploration, and then searching for gold and silver overseas, just trying to get rich, right? These are like get rich quick schemes. Like if I can find a quick route, I will make more money faster. Honestly, there's been essays about the Columbian Exchange a lot on the exams. They've covered effects, they've covered changes and continuities on the Columbian Exchange, causes of trade in this time. I would be really familiar with this time period, and especially through those historical thinking skills. And so this is really about causes, this slide, and I'm going to really get into a lot of the effects, especially like as they relate to each region. And then you could get an essay that's like comparing the effects of the regions. So this is a popular topic. Don't be surprised if it comes up again in LEQs or somewhere. These are some of the major explorers. AP World is not AP European history. You don't have to know a lot of the ins and outs and the backgrounds of these explorers, but they're like part of the story. So, in order for these connections to happen on a larger scale, there needs to be like someone to go do it first. You've got Henry the Navigator, who is like from Portugal going to West Africa. Columbus goes to the Americas. Vasco da Gama goes to India. So you do have these explorers kind of heading out in different directions. Like obviously Columbus has like the namesake of this time, the Columbian Exchange. He's the one that is on this voyage that is connecting the Americas and Afro-Eurasia. He's not the first to do it, but this moment is it, right? Like this is now, it is connected and it is a turning point. It is maybe one of the most important turning points in world history. Columbus as a historical figure is questionable. There's genocide and like other horrible things that he did, but he gets the namesake here. So no Columbus, no this turning point, this year 1492. There aren't a lot of dates in AP World that you really absolutely 100% need to remember this year, but this is one of them. You really should know the year 1492. It's an easy one to remember, right? Columbus sailed the ocean blue. This is the one to know. Some of the new technologies that they had at this time were really making trade a lot easier. So, for example, the astrolabe was getting even better. This is about navigation. better maps, that cartography, understanding of the wind patterns was even better. And then the caravels, these are these small ships, is what they look like. And so the small ships are important because they can travel greater distances and faster because of their size and speed. The Columbian Exchange itself is the circulation of goods from, within the Atlantic. This is specifically what it's talking about. The Columbian Exchange is the Atlantic trade, this first one right here. And so what you have is that triangle trade, and I'll show a map of this in a second. But basically, you have the New World, which is the Americas, and the Old World, which is Afro-Eurasia. And there's a lot of a lot connecting the two. And so there's goods, there's disease, there's people, there's ideas being transferred between both sides. So from the New World, so from the Americas to the Old World, you have things like corn, potatoes, cocoa, chocolate. From the Old World, some of the big things that you have are disease, which wipes out many of the Native Americans. You have the slave trade and all the slave populations, and you have sugar. And so sugar, I mean, imagine life without sugar. Pre-Columbian, like leaders, anyone in the Americas they would drink this like chocolate shake almost, but it didn't have sugar in it. It was very bitter. So, it's like they had chocolate, but no sugar. So think about how things connect and why this is such an important moment for even like history of food. The other major circulation of goods that you have is the silver trade. So you've got this silver that's coming from the Americas, from places like Potosi, from those mines, going to Asia, and the Europeans are transporting the silver between the countries. And so this is another massive circulation of goods. So this is a map that you see, pretty common map for the Columbian Exchange. It's pretty basic, right? Because it's just kind of showing here's how the movement of goods looked for the Columbian Exchange. So you've got, all kinds of goods coming New World, remember New World is Americas, to the Old World. Things like tobacco, pumpkins, squash, cocoa, peanuts, potatoes, corn, all the stuff that never existed before in the Old World. Then, of course, from the Old World into the Americas, you've got coffee, peaches, olives, we have sugar, grains. Livestock is super important, right? This like cattle, sheep, pig, horse. The horse itself, that alone, like a lot of why you don't have the same type of like massive trade networks in the Americas before the Columbian Exchange. Part of that is like a north-south issue, because the Americas are more north-south layout rather than Afro-Eurasia, which is more east-west. And so because you have this north-south pattern, it's harder to travel because you're going along these different latitudes, and it makes it much more difficult to travel long distances. And so horses are going to change a lot of that. So like a lot of the Native American tribes adopt horses into their culture, into their politics and economy, and just all of it. It's a big part of their lifestyles after the horse arrives in the Americas. It wasn't there before. And the second thing here that's the third most important here is disease. So like there's a lot of new diseases that the natives to the Americas had never come in contact to, like, right? Like there was no immunity. There was no way for them to, stay without catching that disease. And it was killing a lot of people very rapidly. And so this is called the Great Dying, and it's like 90% of the populations in the Americas at this time were wiped out. So diseases were massive to spread. Disease that spread from the Americas to the Old World included things like syphilis.